South East Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Diarmuid Devereux is the new CEO of Gorey Chamber, and he joins me now to discuss all things Gorey. Diarmuid, many of our listeners will know you from your time as chairman of Wexford GAA. But how did the opportunity come about for you to take up the CEO role with Gorey Chamber?
I finished up with the GA last December, Karl, and around February, March, I was really starting to get bored. I had nothing to do, and I met Jim Hughes, the president of Gorey Chamber, one day, and we had a chat, and Jim rang me a couple of days later. He knew I was at a loose end, and he asked me would I take it on for a period of time, and I was delighted to do so.
When you joined Gorey Chamber in May last, you said the town is at a crossroads with the growing economy. What did you mean by this?
Well, the town is at a crossroads, and it's not just the town is at a crossroads. North Wexford is, you hear people using the expression like Gorey is booming and the town is thriving and North Wexford is thriving, and that type of language. And it is, we have a very vibrant economy in North Wexford, there's no question about that. Tourism is a huge driver of that, and our retail sector. They're the two main players at the moment within that. But we're at a crossroads in the census. What do we do next? Because the town is very neatly between two bookends, between two shopping centres, one down the Courtown Road and the other up close to the library. And the big threat to the town and to that lovely retail space is that people start talking now about ribbon development outside that area. So I put that out there to the businesses in Gorey, like they really need to sit down now and decide, are we going to consolidate what we have and try to keep that product as good as and as alive as it is, and we need to be very, very careful about what steps we take to further develop the town.
And when you went out and engaged with the business community about this, what was the feedback? Well,
the feedback in Gorey is very positive. I mean, people in Gorey, business people, Gorey has always been a traditional market town, so there's always been a positive positive feedback from business. But people feel that the economy is picking up, there's no question about that. Gorey goes through phases in the summer and at Christmas when we're very, very busy and things are doing well. But the general feeling is we're doing very well. We've 4 top class hotels, as everybody knows, 4-star hotels. We've top class restaurants apart from the retail experience. And the general feeling in Gorey is that we've worked hard to get where we are out of the recession, and really the general feeling at this stage is we need to consolidate what we have now and just bank that down and everybody protect the business that they have before we even consider going any further.
So Diarmuid, you're 6 months into the role as CEO of Gorey Chamber at this stage. Your feet are well and truly in under the desk. But what was your first impression of Gorey Chamber when you went in there?
Well, it's like when you go into any organisation from the outside, you don't know a whole lot about it. That's true. I knew very little about the Chamber. My own business career wasn't, even though I live in Gorey, our business was based in Cork and in Dublin, so I wasn't that familiar with it. But when I got involved first, it was very much that, the businesses were all involved with it. They wanted to be members, but everybody was so busy doing their own thing that, there was no sort of collective responsibility for major decisions being taken. And really the first month was trying to build a relationship with the businesses, but also a key relationship with Wexford County Council, because it was obvious to me from the outside that from the word go on this, we were going nowhere as a town unless the County Council and the business community were working together. So that was my first impression.
Now, it's often asked, how relevant are individual town-based chambers of commerce today? How would you respond to that?
I think they have a relevance, but I think the strength of that relevance is only going to be effective if that chamber's part of a much stronger group. Now, the difficulty we have with chambers at the moment in Wexford, we have 4 chambers of commerce. They have very little interconnection. In fact, I've only met my colleagues on 2 occasions in the last 6 months, and they were for events that had nothing to do with the chambers per se. And outside that, then we're all members of a wider network of Chambers Ireland. My own personal view is Wexford's one county. We have 150,000 people. We're stuck down here in the corner in the southeast, and things are getting better infrastructure-wise, but we need a very strong voice working with the local authority, with the IDA and Enterprise Ireland. And the only way I believe that can be achieved is if we have one strong chamber voice speaking for the whole county.
You alluded earlier to Gorey having a very strong retail and tourism sector, but is the town over-reliant on both of those?
I think Gorey's retail sector, first of all, is very buoyant. It's very robust. You can see that any surveys that we have done or other business groups have done have proven that it's probably the finest retail sector outside Dublin at the moment, all the way down the east coast as far as Gorey. There's no question, I think, about that. The tourist side of it is thriving. Again, due to business people, there are some fantastic tourist attractions in North Wexford now, and the town itself and these attractions are drawing in tourists. You go to Gorey this weekend, 4-star hotels, you can be almost guaranteed it'll all be full.
Now, is the challenge that both sectors, though, can be quite seasonal and low paid?
The seasonality was a factor a number of years ago, but because we have looked north in Gorey, as you're aware, our market is mainly north of Gorey. There are 500,000 people live in South Dublin alone, and they're 50 minutes from the centre of Gorey on the M11 motorway. And that's where we're targeting. Even coming up to Christmas, we'll target promotions up there. So the season is getting wider. It's getting wider and wider, and really I'd say bar the months of January, February, it's busy all the way through.
And what about the low pay aspect to it?
Well, the low pay aspect to it is a problem, and costs to business in North Wexford are the same as everywhere else. To me, this is the biggest single problem we're going to have, and we raised this at our AGM. The cost of doing business in Ireland at the moment and here in Wexford is now higher than it was at the height of the boom in 2007. Now, that's not sustainable. And on top of that, apart from rises in taxation and rates and the cost of credit, etc., there is going to be huge upward pressure, I believe, on salaries because people haven't had an increase. We already see the disruption that's going on in the public service and the semi-state sector is really only getting going at this stage. And at some stage, it will become an employees' marketplace. There's no question. They're saying next year we're down to 4% unemployment, which is practically full employment. And that's going to create horrendous upward pressure on salaries. And that's, I believe, is when the big threat is going to come to business in this country. Not Brexit, not parity, but that in itself is a huge negative side that we need to watch. And that's why we're saying to businesses in North Wexford, the most important thing to do at the moment is to protect what you have. Is to consolidate the business that you have. And the second thing to do after that then is to be shock-proof. Because if costs continue to escalate the way they're going, our economy is going to come under threat. There's no question about that.
And in terms of consolidation, how do they go about achieving that?
They need to not get sucked into this atmosphere that's out there that we're living in the boom times again and that this tide is going to rise all boats. We know that down here in Wexford, Karl, that's not happening. Property prices and the cost of living, etc. in Dublin is soaring, yes, and salaries there are rising. But that tide hasn't hit the South East yet. But the problem that we have with that is that people feel that it is, and we're starting to think like that again. And that to me is where the problem. So, employers need to sit back and look at their cost base. And probably the most important thing they should do between now, say, and the spring is at least keep their costs static if they can, or even take measures to reduce it slightly, because they are going to come under a 4 to 5% pressure. And 4 to 5% increase between now and the spring in your costs is a significant negative pressure that you don't need.
And in terms of wage pressures, that upward only wage pressure that's coming down the track, what advice is Gorey Chamber giving its members in that respect?
Well, what I'm saying to people is you need to sit down with your employees and work this out. You can only pay salaries that the business can carry. That's the first thing. And if employers get themselves sucked into an auction scenario like we did 2005, 2006, where you were paying whatever it was, that will last for a short period of time for both the employees and the employer. But the actual negative effect of it at the end of the day will affect everybody. So, it's not going to be easy to get over it. But I think Chambers Ireland will probably take a view on it. IBEC, I watch IBEC and the Small Firms Association, ISME, and that what their view is. But it's very, very difficult to see how people are going to continue to live on the minimum wage, or if the economy starts to boil up and costs start going up, it's very hard for anybody to live on a minimum wage as it stands at the moment, and that's where the difficulty will arise.
Now, you mentioned a few minutes ago about Gorey being dependent on the market north of the town itself. Have you done research in relation to that to see exactly how much of the business that is being done in Gorey is actually coming from the South Dublin market?
First of all, the vast majority of business done in North Wexford and in the Gorey urban area is local. There's no question about that. It's local from people coming in from the surrounding area. But there is a large segment of our tourist side, obviously, the visitor side and the associated retail side that is coming north north of Gorey, and a lot of that is coming from the South Dublin region. We don't have figures, but we have one very interesting statistic. A study was carried out not by the Chamber, by another agency 12 months ago, and it was a random sample of people in South Dublin, a shopping sample, and close to 50% of the people that were interviewed in it, when asked where they go shopping or where they like to go shopping, it was a very, very close split down the middle between Dundrum and Gorey.
And is that once a year, twice a year, once a week?
The data, that type of data is not available to us, but I do know, you take, for instance, the October weekend, the hotels were all full. 4 hotels, large hotels doing very well. All the holiday homes were full, a lot of the mobile parks. The amount of people from South Dublin in particular that have holiday homes and accommodation in North Wexford is quite substantial, as you know. And they come down. It used to be that they'd only come down in the summer. Now they're coming down during the winter, and you can see that footfall on the main street.
What are your thoughts on local media in that respect?
Well, local media play a huge part. I mean, certainly we get a lot of positive feedback from local radio and the local papers. There's no question about that. Now, we use social media. It's used very effectively. The Love Gorey programme that's run by Wexford County Council has been a huge success.
So a number of international retailers have opened their stores in Gorey town in recent months. Was the Chamber involved in attracting them to the town?
No, we were involved. In my time, we were involved. 2 of them did contact us prior to coming to Gorey for information help, and we provided that. One company coming into the town wanted help with information on schools and banks and churches and solicitors and all that type of thing. So we helped out with that. We were able to help with regard to future-proofing information on things like broadband services, etc., which we hope will be turned on in the town now by Christmas with Virgin Media. So, we're involved in the fringes with the retailers, but we're very actively involved with the providers. Like we put a lot of work in with Virgin Media to get them to come to Gorey and to put Gorey on the list for connections.
Now, one of the unique characteristics of Gorey, of course, is its array of individual boutiques. With international brands moving in, do you see these posing any threat to our homegrown businesses?
I don't think so. I think Gorey's boutiques, I'm not an expert on boutiques, but, my wife likes shopping like all wives, and I have a daughter and they keep me up to date on that side of it. There's a definite couture side to the ladies' shopping market in Gorey. A lot of the boutiques are almost couture shopping. They're specialist. They have very specialist brands. The international labels coming in to the town won't affect that because it's more of a very large label group. To be honest with you, my own feeling is that the more that come in, the better it will be for everybody, because the more shops we have, the more footfall we have, and the more footfall we have, the more business will be done.
And with Gorey's Main Street retail property at almost full occupancy at this stage, how will Gorey further develop its retail footprint over the coming years? That's
the big challenge for everybody. The one thing we absolutely must guard against in the urban area in Gorey is ribbon development outside the 2 bookends on the Courtown Road and where it is at the moment up at the library, because it's a very pleasant 10 to 15 minute walk up through that shopping street, like walking along the street here in Wexford. And the last thing we've seen it internationally happen, we've seen it in the UK, and the evidence is clear that when you start ribbon shopping development outside the urban zone, you do a lot of damage to the heart of the town, and that's the big challenge for us in Gorey. We have to prevent that happening.
Now, the perception is that there's a real disconnect between Gorey Shopping Centre and Gorey's Main Street. Can anything be done to improve how they complement each other?
Well, I think it's a matter for ourselves and the County Council sit down with the Gorey urban area, with the County Council and the District Committee, etc., sit down and look at that. My own view is, we've raised this with them already, my view is that we need a seamless pavement designed to take us all the way up Esmond Street into the main street and up to the shopping centre. Now, again, in fairness to the council, they've done a wonderful job on the avenue. It's very attractive. They've opened up side access that you can shortcut from the main street up to the other shopping centres. But Esmond Street in particular needs to be married into the main street to get over that problem that you're talking about. And that's the only way it can be done. And that is something we have on the list, and it's something we're hoping the County Council will put into the development plan in the next couple of years.
Now, Diarmuid, there's been lots of rumours about the redevelopment of the Market House property on the main street. But what would Gorey Chamber like to see developed there?
Well, we'd like to see, first of all, something that reflects the history of the building. we're in there at the moment with the tourist office and Market House Design. It's used as an art gallery, and it's put to great use. But something needs to be put in there that will draw people into the centre of the town. That's the first thing that we would feel, and that is there for public use. So, that can be used for art exhibitions, for events, for meetings, for, community related events, and, to have them in the centre and the heart of the urban area. That would bring, sustain life within the town. We're not 100% behind the concept of opening up a musical venue that might be open one night every week or one night a fortnight or whatever, and then it's closed. I don't think anybody in Gorey wants that. But we're not against any idea once there's going to be community access on a regular basis to the facility.
Gorey is certainly underdeveloped when it comes to industry, with Stafford Bakeries being the town's largest employer. What can be done to fill this void?
Well, I think the Hatch Lab is the first solution. And again, credit to the County Council, the way they've worked with the local community on this. The Hatch Lab, which is one of the enterprise blocks being put into place by Tony Larkin and Tom Enright and people like that, can take about 350 employees, and we are working really, really hard in the background. Minister Michael Darcy's onto this on an ongoing basis. We're onto it. Obviously, we can't say a whole lot about it, but there is interest in it. I've been in touch with a number of companies, or they've been in touch with myself, looking for more information, and we're putting them onto the County Council. So I'm confident that if we get to 300 jobs into that, that's going to have a massive impact, because these will be well paid, high value jobs. Now, the enterprise plan for the county includes for the construction of 2 more blocks beside the Hatch Lab, and I know that they will start immediately if we could fill the first block. So our plan really for the town is 1,000 jobs at that high end of employment to bring that into the town. And really, I think that's the kickstart that we need. So
is all of the energy going into the IT sector in terms of bringing a new sector to Gorey Town?
No, it's not. Our discussions with Minister Darcy and our own local councillors on this is I believe that Gorey also needs an advanced factory, and I know that the Minister would agree with that. But you must also take into account we're restructuring the chamber as a North Wexford chamber at the moment, because there are quite a lot of manufacturing jobs just outside the town. Like, there are an awful lot of people employed, for instance, at the village of Camolan. There are a couple of serious employers there. You go into Ballycanoe, you have Fox's Engineering, and you spread out from the town, and there's quite a lot of activity going on, particularly in the agri-business and, jobs associated with the agri-business and fruit growing and all that type of thing. So, we're not just dependent on tourism and retail. They are big players, but there's absolutely no question, you are right, we need 350, well-paid, good quality jobs in Gorey.
Finally, as we look ahead to 2018, what are your main priorities for Gorey Chamber?
Well, the main priority for the Chamber is to strengthen itself. We need to do that. We need to strengthen the Chamber to become more of a policy-driven organisation. We need to definitely start lobbying far more on behalf of the town, on behalf of residents and the business community. I think that's the top priority we have. The second one we have then is to work as closely as we can with Wexford County Council. We simply have to, ourselves and Wexford County Council have to be joined at the hip, because the IDA won't talk to us, Enterprise Ireland won't talk to us unless they know that we are both working together. And we've a very good relationship developed over the last 6 months, and I intend to try and develop that as strongly as we can over the coming year.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.